Okay, welcome to another edition of Now You Know. My name is Chris Perkins, and today we have Christine Almand, who is town manager for Skowhegan, and we're sitting in the council room, and we're sitting at the desk where she and the selectmen sit. So I'm feeling very powerful today. This is pretty good. So, Christine, I was thinking about what we were going to talk about, which is always a good idea before you come on the show. And I looked at all the projects that are going on in Skowhegan right now. And I actually looked, you have a little map here in the room, and you have listed projects, and there were like 19 of them going on there. And I said, my God, this is a lot of stuff to me happening all at one time. And I happened to see a comment by one of your selectmen, Steve Gavoni, in the paper that basically indicated that we have more stuff going on and more money being spent in Skowhegan on projects. This is, of course, today's dollars versus 100 some odd years ago. Pre-World War I was the last time we had this level of activity going on in the community. So we're about due, after 120 years, to have a lot of stuff going on, and we do. And it's hard to know where to start. Maybe what I'll do is I'll follow the money here a little bit and kind of do it based on cost of the project, maybe, if I can keep it straight.
Sure.
But the clear winner on that one is Sappy Paper.
Yeah.
And if I recollect correctly, they're spending like $418 million on converting the number 2 paper machine into something that will involve kind of I forget what sulfate board packaging, which will package cosmetics and beauty products and all that type of stuff. And basically where they're going, I think, is they're going away from the regular paper, because that's where the industry is going.
Yeah, we're right here these days.
Yes. And so they're going away from that, and Sappy, you gotta say, is a pretty darn smart company. They have followed the trends, and unlike a lot of the other paper companies in Maine, they have been very progressive, and that's kept them going and thriving.
Yeah, I mean, the current investment is huge and very appreciative that they're doing that. I believe I read that there's only 6 paper mills left in the state after the J closure. But this is also on the heels of the paper machine 1 was rebuilt just a few years ago. They spent about $200 million to rebuild paper machine 1, and then also to make some improvements in their wood yard.
Right, but as long as they're working,
so
you don't need to pay them.
They're making sure that we're going to be able to continue into the future.
Still working?
And I was also reading today that Sappy posted on their Facebook page a story that they're working with the University of Maine system for other types of paper products. And one of them is even helpful in cancer diagnostics. So it's really exciting to see them stay ahead of the curve and shift to the market changes and, securing really good jobs in this area.
Yeah, and I don't think this particular project is going to add many new permanent jobs. If I read correctly, I think they have about 780 employees there now, but it will entail a lot of construction jobs. And they were talking like 1,000 construction jobs. And so those people come in here and they work, and then they got to stay somewhere, and they got to spend some money somewhere, and that's got to have some nice spin-off effects for businesses around here, I think.
Yeah, but also for me, it's about the longevity, looking into the future. It's, making sure that we don't have the devastating changes that have happened in some of the other mill towns around the state. So they're doing the improvements and staying ahead of the curve in order to avoid that. We're very fortunate that they're here.
Yeah, we are very fortunate, and in looking at it from a tax perspective, it can't hurt that they're spending another $418 million this year.
Yeah, so I mean, the impact to the mill rate is not as direct. There is a business equipment tax exemption program through the state of Maine.
Right.
So that allows them some tax relief. How that model works is the state reimburses us for a percentage of that. And because we have such a large amount of that in town, we get a higher percentage. So it's not as a direct impact to the mill rate as you might think if you don't understand how that program works. But again, for me, it's the longevity. It's them being able to stay open and provide those jobs, even if they're not adding jobs. It's about keeping those jobs.
Now, we have a TIF based on them, right? And how does that work now? I remember, it's different than when it got originally set up.
Yeah, so as I entered into the town manager's office a little over 8 years ago, we were working with SAPI to come to an agreement on their tax valuation. And when we reduced their tax valuation, as most paper mills at the time had to be greatly reduced, that basically no longer allowed us to have any TIF capture.
Okay.
So the TIF hasn't expired. We're just not going to see any additional funds.
Okay, that's how that works.
Yeah.
Kind of lost track of all that stuff. TIFs are confusing enough as it is. They're set up in so many different ways that...
Yeah, but I mean, the idea behind TIFs are, they're good for the business or the project, but they're also good for the community because a large portion of your tax bill doesn't exactly go to the town. It goes to pay school taxes and also county taxes.
Right.
And so when you put something in a TIF, it's sheltered from those taxes.
Exactly.
And so you can keep that locally. So whether you come up to an agreement where you give the project owner some of that back and how much is retained by the town, whether it's used for general taxation or often used for economic purposes. So in addition to the SAPI TIF, which again is no longer receiving any funds, we also have the downtown TIF.
Right.
We also have a housing TIF with KB Cap for the affordable housing project that they are working on Mary Street. And with a lot of the development going on right now, we're talking to 2 other entities for TIFs coming up in the very near future. The project on the island, the spinning mill.
Right.
The mill redevelopment. And then also for the project that New Balance is doing.
Right. And we're going to cover all those things here today. I'm glad you explained TIF, which is tax increment financing, because not the average layman doesn't really understand those things. And as I said, they can get fairly complex depending on how they're set up.
And there's a lot more information I could help you out with, but that would probably take
we don't have enough time.
Yeah.
So anyways, the SAPI thing is a big thing, and I think they're doing that project over the next couple of years and supposedly finishing up in 2025.
Yeah, it'll take a little while to do that upgrade. It took a little while to do the paper machine 1.
Just so people can understand the scope of this, if you've not ever been into SAPI, and a lot of people have, the paper machines, this is going to be about the size, I think I saw, of like 2 football fields.
They're large.
Huge.
I went in and I saw, I did tour the mill. I've been in there a couple times and they're huge. There is nothing like a paper machine. So SAPI is currently almost 40% of our tax base. And that's all in personal property. The buildings have value, but the value is really in the machinery. And there's nothing like it in anywhere in the state, in any other industry that has that type of value. And so they're very large machines.
Well, they're a huge piece, as you said, 40%. they're a huge piece, and I'm glad they're investing, and I think the town should be very happy with everything that's going on there. One other question, not to wade too much into controversy here, but the whole Shawmut Dam thing. Obviously, Sappi isn't really, I don't know if I can put words in their mouth, being overly concerned, but they're going ahead with this, and yet we've heard something about them being pretty concerned if the Shawmut Dam is taken down, they don't have the water flow. You know, how is that all going? Do you know? I haven't heard any more about it.
I haven't heard anything super recently in the last couple months. I know that, there's application processes and permitting that there's continued conversations on with the administration. But as far as Sappi's concerned, there's some infrastructure improvements that they would have to make for their water intake. And water is a huge part of the process.
Right.
So I would imagine that Sappi has a team working with, I'm sure they're having conversations with Brookfield and with the governor's office and several state agencies about the importance and what it would take if the dam were removed. Yeah.
Well, there must be some level of confidence if they're going ahead with an investment like this, I think. It depends on who you're talking about, how much that's going to affect them out there. And
and I'm certainly not going to speculate or pick any sides on that.
No, and I wouldn't ask you to do that.
Yeah.
But anyways, I thought it was very encouraging they make that type of investment, particularly in light of the Shawmut Dam situation.
Yeah, because it would cost them a lot of money to make those improvements, and certainly not a situation we want them to be in. And so I don't know how ultimately that'll be resolved.
Well, the governor says she doesn't want them to go out of business or anything. That's what the governor says.
I'm not sure who would.
Let's hold the governor to her word on that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, I guess I said I'd look at some of these projects in kind of descending investment order. So the next one I would think would be New Balance.
Yes.
And that is a huge thing for the town of Skowhegan. And this is like, were they saying this is the biggest investment they have made in new buildings and infrastructure, and they decided to make it in Skowhegan. So that's a pretty good thing. It's going to have a new building. Of course, they've been pretty smart. They've been buying up property in what has become their campus area now, and including the old Skowhegan Savings Bank. And I guess those buildings are going to be taken down as part of the
old car dealership as well as the...
That's right, too, the old car dealership on the corner. So they're going to take those down, and they're going to build, I think it's like 120,000 square foot building, and then they're going to renovate, once they're done with that, renovate the existing building.
Yeah.
And they're going to spend roughly about $65 million. So that is really pretty big stuff. The other thing is it's going to create about 200 additional jobs. And you and I had this conversation the other day. Where are they coming from exactly? But 200 additional jobs. So this is a pretty exciting thing for the town.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's difficult to find workforce these days. I believe they're very confident that they're going to be able to fill those jobs. They are good jobs.
Yeah.
They're good paying, good jobs. We've got all sorts of workforce challenges all over the state, and some of them are more widespread than just our state. Whether it's housing or childcare, and there's people working on those things, and they're not immediate overnight fixes. But New Balance is fairly confident in their ability to do that, and so we're doing whatever we can here at the town to try and help make that project as successful as we can.
Now, you mentioned a TIF too, potentially for them.
Yeah, we're in discussions now.
Yeah.
Jeff Hewitt, our Economic Community Development Director, and myself, we've been talking with them. We're going to be speaking with the board very soon. We're anticipating possibly a special town meeting if we can get that done in time for that. Otherwise, I wouldn't want to push it off until the annual meeting in June, but we're hopeful and trying to come to something that'll work for everyone.
Isn't
right
it
now.
pretty much part of the playbook of all the, you know, when you're having a business is doing a big project like this, coming to town for a TIF, it's pretty commonplace, isn't it?
When it's something of this size, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a very large scope, a very big expense, $65 million. That's a considerable investment that they're making.
And it's supposed to like double their output, I think. I don't know whether that was just town or factory-wide, whether that was going to be, but it's supposed to make a huge difference in their output of shoes. Maybe clothing, some clothing products, I guess.
No,
or somebody
not
makes
here.
it for them, but not here. Shoes here. So they're going to be doing that. The timeline on this, I think if I remember, they're going to start late this spring
That's what we're working towards.
and have it finished up late summer next year. And then maybe, then I think they go to the other building, the existing building, and renovate that. So by the end of, say, 2024, then it should be mostly gone, I think.
Yeah, I don't have a exact updated timeline, but there's a lot of stuff going on right now. Even like the project on the mill, they've even started work.
Yeah, yeah. And so there's New Balance, okay, another big one, okay? And actually, I think I had it out of order a little bit in terms of money being spent. And the other one, which is kind of a town project, is this new school that's going in up on Heselton Street, in basically the same area as the current Margaret Chase Smith School. Not
Yes.
exactly, but so that's going in up there, and I believe that is like a $75
Yes.
million project, and that is supposed to get started, I think, this year and be completed by 2025. And so that's a huge project.
Absolutely.
It's quite a school.
Yeah, they're going to be consolidating multiple schools, North L, Bloomfield Elementary,
Yeah. Part of
Margaret Chase
Canaan,
Smith,
yeah.
one of the Canaan, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then not only that, but they're also going to be taking in much younger,
They're going down to pre-K, right?
6 weeks through grade 5.
They're going really down there.
Yes.
To a very early, and of course that all ties in with the early childhood development, Educare, KV CAP.
I don't
building that
know,
they're gonna
have you had an opportunity to check out Educare in Waterville?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not. I mean, they've been going for like 10 years, and I've heard it's a very successful program, and we're kind of being tied in with them. And of course, they have already raised, well, this is old news, it was like 1.6 million. It's probably well above that now, but between the Height family and the Almand and Skyline Savings Bank and others have contributed major money to this.
Yeah, Erin Merrill is part of that fundraising
Yeah.
effort, and I was actually with her at a Mid-Maine Chamber event at Educare, and I got a tour. I'm really excited about what that will do for the community. There's definitely a need, definitely a need.
Now, so this will allow, I mean, apparently a lot of a child's development happens in those formative years before, until age 5, socially and behaviorally, and a number of different development areas happen at that time. And supposedly this Educare program is supposed to really get them off to a good start, let's put it that way. And apparently it's going to involve parents and other members of the community being part of this too, to help out. I don't understand all the, we should have Sam Hyde on here splints of this.
Yes.
But all of that going on. But it honestly, it sounds like a very exciting thing for the town. And if we can get these kids off to a good start, maybe they will really, hopefully, amount to something in their life and contribute their skills to the Skowhegan area.
Yeah, so in Skowhegan and in the Somerset area, we, have some not so great statistics. There is a segment of the population that is very disadvantaged. And then there's also statistics on health. So, we're doing everything that we can globally as a community to try and fix some of that.
Well, let's hope this all works. But it seems to be off to a very good start. And so they're going to be working on that building and hopefully having it all finished up, I think, for the 26 school year, something like that. But that also, by locating the building there, that set off a chain reaction of a bunch of other things. And we've already talked about the closing of the schools, or closing of 2 schools, I guess. And, but they had to relocate the bus garage, which is now going to go up to Jewett Street, or the corner of Jewett Street, or whatever.
I believe so. We're North Elementary School.
Yeah, essentially where North Elementary School is now. So that's going to go up there. And the other thing is we had Memorial Field there, which is where baseball has been played ever since I was a little kid. And now all of a sudden that's got to get moved. And the town, how did that work? Did the town sell that land to the district where because the town owned the ball field, correct?
Yes, so the town owned the ball field. Over the decades, we got some very small grants from LWCF, and perpetually we have to make that land available for recreation. But where the school wanted to use it for school, we had to engage with the federal government to relocate those recreational assets.
Okay.
We also have been in the process of doing expansion of ball fields up near the community center.
Right.
So we thought that it was a good opportunity to take the fields that are there for relocation and add it to the project that we had in the works. And so those fields will be moved pretty conveniently in between the community center and the high school.
Okay.
Probably one of the largest users of that ball field specifically is the high school. So that makes it much.
Would it still be the town's ball field and the high school would use it?
Yes, so the school is purchasing that property from the town for 1.9 million. We have the closing later this month.
Okay.
So we'll be doing that as we work to get that ball field, several different recreational fields moving.
Well, it kind of makes sense from a town, and certainly a school perspective, to have all that kind of ball fields and everything consolidated in one area. Memorial is kind of the lone wolf over here on this side, away from the other.
Yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to it. It's nice to have assets like that available on both sides of the river, so that, proximity to where people live. But we also have a lot of other assets that are available. I believe that one of those fields is going to stay, and the school's going to maintain that, and they're also going to maintain the trail system back there.
Oh, that's right, there's a trail system.
So I
as
mean,
well.
the school's still going to keep those, some of those recreational pieces there.
Yeah. So, okay, there's another one. So we've talked about 418 million, 65 million, and 75 million. I say we're dropping down a little bit, but it's still a pretty major project on the island.
Yeah.
And I will give credit where credit's due. This is kind of the brainchild of Jeff and Pam Powers and Bigelow Brewing, and this has been in the works for quite a long time. And then, I don't know how it all happened, but they tied in with High Tide Capital in Bangor. They probably said, boy, we could use a little help in this thing. And so High Tide Capital ended up buying the building from them, but they're still going to locate some or part of their business in downstairs on the first floor of, and by the way, this is for people who've been around here for a long time, the main spinning mill. For folks that haven't been around or a little younger, Solon Manufacturing, and maybe even Chapter 11, if you can remember that. So it's that building, that big building, which is a beautiful building, but it's gotten a little bit of an eyesore here in recent years.
They're working on windows. That's going to be amazing.
Yeah, and I've seen some pictures on Facebook of some of the updates, and it looks pretty impressive thus far. I've seen the modeling of the final look, and it looks really, really great. It looks like a spectacular project. And you want to describe it a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, there's going to be some structures that are going to be removed and some parking put into place, but the large structure itself is going to complete remodel. They're going to put in the style of window that was there at the time. It's going to be so impressive to look at. I don't know if you've seen any of the other projects around the state. Like most recently, I've been checking out some of the mill redevelopments down in Biddeford, but but we've seen these successful projects.
I've seen some of the Biddeford ones, yeah.
And so initially, before they purchased the building, when I was on a tour with them and Jeff and Pam, you know, they were asking, what does the town need more? Like, do you need housing? Do you need a hotel? You know, and I was like,
state needs housing too. The whole state needs housing. So.
It's everywhere. It's not just a Skowhegan problem.
Yeah.
So my visceral response was both. We need both. You know, and I wasn't sure. So a project like that is going to cost about $15 million, if not more, and it's not going to be worth that. You know, assessed value. Yeah. Or otherwise, you're not going to be able to sell it for that when you're done putting that much money into it. So it requires a lot of tax credits and things like that. Of course. So we're talking to them about a TIF, but there's other tax credits available as well.
Well, didn't they also name that as an historical building last year? And I'm sure that leads to a series of credits and things.
Yeah, so I'm not going to pretend to be a development expert, but there are a lot of different pieces that have to make a project like that work in order to be able to fund it. Yeah. So what we're going to see there are, I believe, how many apartments? I think there's like 45 apartments, 45. Maybe 15 hotel rooms.
Yeah.
And then Bigelow Brewing, that would be a tap room. Initially, Bigelow had considered moving their whole brewing operation down there, but right now we're looking at a tap room.
Yeah.
So housing and hotel and tap room.
Yeah, and we sure need more apartments or more housing here in town. I don't know what economic strata this is going to be. One would think, just looking at that place and its location, it's probably going to not be low-income housing, I don't think.
No, it won't be an affordable housing project.
Yeah.
The state needs, there have been studies, and the state needs so much in the affordable housing field. But that being said, even houses that aren't as affordable, apartments, are needed as well. I mean, we have doctors that come to work at the hospital, and maybe they're not looking to purchase a home right off, or maybe they can't find what they're looking for, or maybe they want the ease of not having the woes of home ownership. So they need places to live as well. So I think it takes everything.
Actually, yeah.
In the community.
I'm on the hospital board, and that is an issue.
Yeah.
Trying to find good housing for doctors or nurses.
Yeah.
And other professionals coming into the community, and that may be a good remedy for that.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now you got a hotel there too. I think it's like a 15 room, and it's supposedly pretty good size hotel rooms, and maybe even, you know, more than short-term occupancy.
Yeah.
In those, and they came up with a very inventive name of Skowhegan Hotel. So I'm not being critical about that, but I think that's nice that they name it after the town. And that's going to be interesting. I suppose we could use a few more hotel rooms.
Yeah, and it'll be a different type of model too.
Yeah.
Something a little bit newer. It sounds like less of your traditional check-in and check-out.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know all the details yet.
Well,
but it sounds
the
different.
details have been light this far, at
Yeah.
least in what I've been able to get. And I know up on the roof, you're going to have this area up there with great views of Skowhegan and the Kennebec River and the whole thing. It sounds pretty impressive.
I've been up there.
I don't know what else they're going to
Yeah,
put up
it's
there. They're going to have
gorgeous.
a pool or something up there too? Or?
No, one of the buildings in Biddeford, I went up to the roof and they have a pool, and that's on a historic building. But in
Yeah.
order for it to work within the historic credits, you can't be able to see it from the road.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything like that at this project.
Now down in the, you know, I look at that building and I look at how much room they've got there, and I say, parking is not going to be the easiest thing there, or getting out of there, but we'll get into the traffic thing in a little bit. But are they having, at one time, I think the Powers talked about having some parking underneath the building or something? I didn't see any of that mentioned in the article that I read. Whether there's any parking beyond just what's around the building, I don't know.
I'm gonna say, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't wanna give you wrong.
No. And I couldn't find the information myself, so
I could probably walk down the hall and find out.
yeah, and find out what's going on with that. But I think they've been probably deliberately at this point a little light on the details, which probably means that's leaving them open to make a few changes as they go along, perhaps.
Well, and it's hard when you're doing construction right now with the way that that industry is going, and all of the markets, the costs fluctuate so greatly.
Oh, yeah.
So
A little
you have
better.
to.
It's getting a little
It's getting a little better, but
now,
you have to get creative and be
Yeah.
willing to pivot and figure it out.
Well, these guys have done some other projects, so I guess some pretty good sized ones. So I guess I'm assuming they know what they're doing here. And I must say, they are going very hard at it. You know, I think this all started in November with the roof, and I drive by there just about every day, and they're working, I'd say, a minimum of 6 days a week on this project at all hours, I could tell. And so they are really going at this in a very ambitious way, it looks like. And I think their goal, like it's almost the same timeline with all these projects, is I think they're talking about being fully functional towards the end of 2024.
Yeah, I mean, you probably saw the same post that I did, that
Yeah.
Bigelow Brewing put, that with the sandblasting work. And
Yeah,
you
yeah.
saw photos of the
Yes.
internal framing. and-
Yeah, it looked pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Looked pretty impressive. You know, it's still a ways off, so it's a little hard to visualize some of this stuff. But they even showed green space around, and they showed what appeared to be maybe outdoor dining. So if you're tap room, you can
Yeah,
bring
they're
it
looking
outside,
to
too.
definitely bring a better, front appeal to the location, added green space for sure.
Yeah. So we got that project. Where do we go from here? You've got, and I haven't read much about this in a while, but the Mary Street project with KV Cap. That looks as though that's pretty well along.
Yeah.
And we were talking about housing. That's a big thing, housing-wise for the town, right? And that is going into the more subsidized market. Or it is
Yeah, so
subsidized.
that was an affordable housing project, and we did do a TIF with KV Cap for that housing project.
Yeah.
I remember there was a groundbreaking ceremony. I guess after we had done the TIF, there was some additional work that they had done in the legislature, so the governor and the speaker at the time came for the groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Because there's a huge need in the state and therefore a push to try and make these projects become reality. And so I think it was 40 units of affordable housing.
Something like that. I didn't unfortunately, didn't do a lot of research on that particular one, but I think I remember that as well. It was like 40, and they've got to be, it looks as though that would be this year sometime, wouldn't it? I think.
I haven't gotten any current updates from our code enforcement officer on that progress, but they're moving right along.
So that'll be a big thing for the area as well.
Yeah.
So between that, potentially 40 units there and 45 units in on the island, that should be pretty helpful, I would think.
Yeah,
Making a
that'll
dent
definitely
anyways.
put a dent in the need, for sure, but we definitely will need more.
Yeah.
But
Well, I
that
noticed
helps.
Sam Hite's trying to do one up in Madison.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows, maybe you want Skowhegan too. Once he
Perhaps.
gets his feet wet up there, so. whatever.
Yeah, I know his developer that he's working with has been looking at some properties in Skowhegan too, and I'd love to see that.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Oh, and actually, I skipped this, but now I'm going to go back to it. The public safety building. How could we forget that? And that's a $10 million project, right?
Yep.
And that's had a few fits and starts to it, but I think it looks as though everything's going ahead okay, right?
Yep, so it's not probably your traditional build what you might expect,
Yeah.
to see if you're driving past it each and every day, because it's prefabricated metal
right.
structure, so most of it's built in Canada, they truck it here, and then it's erected, so.
It's one of those things where you sit around and you say, when is it ever going to get done? And all of a sudden, bang, they got all this stuff put together.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've had some minor delays in the project.
Yeah.
Nothing substantial. We're still looking at potentially mid-July
Yeah.
to move in. And so really excited. Been I don't go by every day, but I do check it out from time to time. We have regular meetings on updates, and there's a lot of work still to be done. And in order to make the project viable, because of how much inflation there was, we had to strip some parts of it and get creative. I know the police chief, for instance, has been working on getting grants to put back into the project what we had to strip in order to meet the budget. So he's building a section of fence at a time. He's been getting grants for lockers, and he's been getting donations for flags and things like that.
Well, what I know of the police chief, he's a pretty persuasive guy, so I can imagine he's doing a pretty good job in that area. And, as you saw with that project, just like everything else these days, trying to get a budget for something with constantly changing prices all the time is just a very, very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, it was a horrible morning when we opened the bids, and they were $3 million higher than we had anticipated. But we weren't the only ones in the same boat. There are a lot of communities in the state right now making these types of commitments to their infrastructure, and we were seeing it left and right. And a lot of communities actually had to go back to their taxpayers and ask for more money. It was, a pretty big priority here to not do that. So we did our best to try and figure out how to make it work. And I think that we've done a good job doing that to make sure that we have what we need that will last us well into the future. So,
Well, it's not like this wasn't needed. We have a fire station on the island that's been there for, going back well into the early 1900s, I think, somewhere. And I remember in the flood of 87, right? Flood of 87, there was talk back then about, we can't have this fire station on the island anymore because you saw what happened, and they're going to be able to get off if something like this happens again. And at that time, I go back a ways. At that time, they were talking about potentially putting a bigger station on the north side of town and a smaller one, substation, on the south side of town. And then the years went by and other things became more important. Keeping taxes down seemed like a good idea, and that just never happened. This is going to be a big change. And as far as the police station, they've been operating out of the basement here in the municipal building forever.
Yeah.
And
they get by.
Yeah.
They have done fairly well to get by, but it's honestly not it's not meeting the needs of our police department.
So anyways, that's an exciting new thing. So I didn't add up all the numbers of all these projects, but they're, we're well over 500 million, 700 million of projects. And that's an awful lot of stuff to be happening all at one time. Now let's get away from the pure money things. You guys, in association with the Department of Transportation and Main Street Skowhegan, are involved in this Village Initiative Partnership, which is something that really was a DOT idea, right? But you were in the process for, how many times has that done? At least three times, looking at either, bypass was part of the earlier discussion. Second bridge was what this discussion was about, and it was about maybe 3 years into the process. And you, as usually happens, you narrow it down to a few things, and then you have vocal groups that say, not where we are, not where, and so we had two particular areas that was narrowed down to. And so, I don't know quite the timeline, but I think along with DOT and the town, you said, and plus we got all these other projects going on. You said maybe we should just step back from this and look at this in a more, and these are your words, I think, holistic approach as to how we're going to deal with this, and see what all of this is going to amount to before, and look at it in total rather than just looking at individual projects and their impact on.
So we were talking to DOT about several projects throughout town, including improvements up at the Jewett Street intersection with Madison Avenue. We were in the planning phases for traffic signal at the Commercial Street, Madison Avenue intersection. We're working on sidewalk extension along Norwich Ave up to Margaret Chase Smith. And then with the new housing project, we're hoping to continue all the way up. That's just like the tip of the iceberg on the different projects we're discussing with DOT, but like as you're discussing those projects with DOT, maybe you're not always talking to the same people at DOT, and so you're working on, you're just looking at that one project and not looking at how it impacts the other projects. So when we're talking about the bridge, we were doing our best to take all of that into consideration, but with all these extra moving parts being added each and every day, like I showed you the list that I had created a year ago, but there's like so many new things and like huge big things, right? And so it was hard to move forward when there were all these other moving parts. The selectmen were like, whoa, let's look at how they impact each other.
Right.
And at the same time that we're having that conversation, along with some folks that had some concerns, including the board, about that traffic signal.
Yeah.
You know, all of this was happening at the same time, and the DOT came out with the new Village Partnership Initiative. It's a new way to look at planning. So for a long time, you know, we've gotten away from our downtowns and making it safe and walkable, and we've gotten more into trying to get your personal vehicle from A to B as quickly as possible. You know, the world is shifting and we're trying to go back to that, where the downtown's safer and more inviting, slowing the speeds down. And we're seeing some smaller changes being made in some communities, and then some communities are making massive changes. Waterville's gone recently through some large changes.
Two-way traffic, yeah.
Sanford was successful in working with the DOT to get some federal raised grants. So we need to do the planning process so that we can go for those federal funds to make those large once-in-a-generation changes, to make it safer and more friendly, as well as looking at how it impacts economic development.
And that's, with this village partnership initiative, you're looking at all of this, right?
Yes.
And who's involved? I know town, I know Main Street, but there are other, you kind of brought it out to the community to get their input on some of this stuff too. Right?
So we created, it's a partnership between Maine DOT and the town of Skowhegan. So we then contracted with VHB as our consultant. That's going to be helping us with the planning and engineering phases. And then we have a study team that includes myself, Steve Gavoni from the Board of Selectmen has some great expertise to add.
Yeah,
Christina from Main Street, Jason, our road commissioner, Joel, our contracted planner, who also does planning for DOT with his position at KB Cog.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're the study team that are going to be doing a majority of the work from the town's role. But then we've also engaged a rather large committee that I'm working on a meeting together in a couple weeks. Our first kickoff meeting with the committee. And we're trying to make sure that we get everyone from all of the key stakeholders. We're making sure we have downtown business, we have South Side, we have school representatives, hospital. Wanted to make sure we grabbed those that would be impacted by a bridge, such as Somerset Woods trustees. Wanted to make sure we grabbed someone from the Veterans Organization. We want someone from the trucking industry. We wanted to make sure that we were grabbing all the key stakeholders.
Well, you're smart to do that because you leave them out and then they're going to complain later. So you really want to involve them.
Well, and they might complain throughout the whole process.
Well, they may, but
fine,
at least
we
you
need that
can
feedback.
deal with it as you go along.
No, but we need everyone's input, which is what's most important. So you can't just ignore someone because you don't agree with them necessarily.
Yeah. And, you know, I've heard, particularly with the second bridge, I've heard the various, whether it be Somerset Woods or the BFW and so forth, their complaints. And they're very legitimate complaints. Sometimes, you have to do what's best for the common good in situations, but at the same time, they have very legitimate concerns.
Absolutely. I don't know of a location that we can put a bridge that will not have negative property impacts.
It's can't.
Not possible.
There's always going to be, in anything you do, there's going to be certain winners and losers, and you hope there are a lot more winners losers in those situations, but
And then you try and mitigate that as best you can.
exactly right, yeah.
Yeah.
You do that. So as part of this, I think this is part of the Village Partnership Initiative, but you tried a few different things, I guess, as part of the traffic and calming the traffic, and I know they tried the kind of the crosswalk thing to kind of perk it up and make it more noticeable.
So we had the Build Maine conference here
Yeah.
last year and brought people from all over the state and beyond for a conference. And part of that was some of these tactical,
Yeah.
trial projects.
Yes.
I would say that we heard a lot of positive feedback about some of the pedestrian improvements. I mean, it wasn't perfect. Not everybody's gonna love it, but for the most part, there was definitely an increase to safety.
Yes, and I think that's the key thing. It's, and God knows, having been involved in a business downtown, or several businesses downtown, you would know at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on, it was like Speedway 95 down Water Street as people got out of work. And particularly for those that still had to make the corner around Whittemore's real estate and stuff, you're going really fast and then you're trying to make that corner and the visibility isn't very good there, and it's just a dangerous situation. Same with Madison Avenue and Commercial Street.
Yeah.
When you're trying to say, it's just, this whole thing, I went back in history a little bit and they changed the traffic pattern from two-way to one-way, I believe in like the 1950s.
That's about when the country decided that they wanted to make things faster.
They wanted to make it faster, and there were still logs going down the Kennebec River at that time, and there were railroad tracks that would run through. So basically, they were transportation was mostly that way, by either railroad or with the logs floating down the river. So you didn't have Sappy Paper Company. You didn't have all these pulp trucks and big trucks that were going through the town.
Yeah.
So, and plus there was just less traffic overall. So back then it worked pretty darn well.
Well, but we do have Sappy, so we do want to make sure that those trucks can get through safely.
Absolutely.
So it's trying to figure out that balance and how to best make it work. I think we've had some improvement with the increased signage for truck routes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that.
Some folks didn't realize that there were truck routes.
Yeah.
And maybe don't like where they are based on where they live.
They want to get to point A to point B in the shortest distance,
Yeah.
obviously. And yeah, that corner was not really going around that, as we call it, the Flatiron District, was never really made for big 4-axle plus trucks, okay? And it just really wasn't made for that. And obviously, when you have them and you mix that in with the heavy traffic flow, it bottlenecks the traffic. But between that and the speed issue at other times, it's never been a very safe, and at least in recent years, safe pedestrian area downtown.
So actually, one of the things that we tried there at that location where you turn, it was in a response to an earlier conversation that started with the DOT. Several years ago, they came to us because that has been listed for many years as a high crash location.
Yes.
Now, admittedly, when you add a traffic signal, it increases the number of accidents. However, it decreases the level of damage,
Yes.
both to your vehicle and to personal injury, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going at a slower speed.
Right.
So they had a conversation with a former board, and the board agreed that we should put in a traffic signal. Eventually, when the design came back to us, it was not favorable the board had some concerns, some business owners had some concerns. So we've had an ongoing conversation with the state about that. And so we've agreed to try some things out. I would say that everyone will agree that that was not successful.
That, I think, and this is kind of my perspective on it, it happened without a lot of fanfare before, and people were kind of taken by surprise. And I think a lot of those truckers who are on automatic pilot in their head just said, they just wouldn't pay attention to it early on, and you had some.
So there's some of that. There was
mess-ups
some
on the corner.
intentional not
But
doing what they're supposed to. So we acknowledge, the town acknowledges, the state acknowledges, the citizens. We all know that that didn't work. What I can say is that without failure, you can't succeed.
No, and I think it's right as far as the big trucks that they cannot make that corner. So they, if they're going east to north-south, I guess, whatever, they're coming from Sappy or up 201 and coming across, they probably should be going up to North Avenue and then up and then across Jewett Street, or in order to do that. But it's it makes sense. But of course, from their perspective, they're saying, that's a little bit farther to go.
And you kind of get used to something, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Change is difficult, but it's safer, and it's really not further out of the way. And depending on the time of day, that might even be a slower way to travel. So what I can say is that we're trying to figure it out. And the DOT's been good to work with us, because these are state roads. They could honestly
Do what they want.
Yeah. So it's nice that we're, working together. So in the spring, we will be working on a temporary traffic signal situation to see how it works.
Okay.
So we had a meeting, I can't even keep track of time anymore with all these projects, within the last couple months, where we evaluated how that went. And then talked about the changes coming in the spring, just as our next step in trying to improve that intersection.
Have you noticed, and of course that project ended, but you still have the signage up for the trucks to stay in what would be the right lane as they come into that. Have you noticed a greater compliance with that because of the signage?
Certainly not while we had the barricades up, but we have noticed a decrease. And by we, I kind of use Steve Gavoni's bird's eye view from, it's right in front of his business. So he saw a great reduction while the project was going on that stretch of Commercial Street. I would say that probably some of it has stayed down, but not anywhere near as much as while we had the project going.
Well, I used to be an owner at Whittemore's Real Estate, and I had a really nice vantage point of everything that was going on downtown. And until they extended the curb out, we even would have trucks not able to make it and clip off corners of our building a few different times. So I've known that was a huge problem.
They've taken out
Forever.
fire hydrants down there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So the traffic design, I guess my point originally was the traffic design made a lot of sense when they started in the 1950s and maybe through the 70s to 80 and stuff, but because of all the changes that have happened since, it doesn't make as much sense. Although I don't know how you change it. I don't know if you can do two-way like they did in Waterville, if there's a way to do it. I mean, that's part of your planning people, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're throwing out all kinds of ideas, and when we get the stakeholders to the table, we'll be, looking for all sorts of ideas,
Yeah.
Don't bring me problems, bring me solutions.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's always been a tough one. It's
Yeah.
always been a problem there. So You know, I told you early on, I didn't see how we could get through everything I was thinking of.
Oh, we didn't. It's okay.
And we did not. And we still got a couple more minutes. Anything you want to say on anything in particular that I haven't covered?
Oh, not really. I think we're just excited about the progress that's happening in the community. It's a little overwhelming at times, but you know, we have a lot of really good people in this community that share a vision, and we're moving forward. And I can't even believe we didn't talk about the river part.
Oh, well, you know, I was just going to say that, and that is going to be perhaps it's going to have a huge impact on the town, and I got to say, you know, I was one of those naysayers for a long time because it's going to be going on 20 years, and I said, this is never going to happen, really? But I have seen lately $2 million of money here, and then another $4.9 million coming in, and now I'm seeing the planning going on for the along the riverbank as the things you're going to do. You even put out the what do you call it? It was behind Unwind.
Yeah, the little pop-up
area
green
up
space
behind, yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, so you did that. So, yeah, I was thinking about that we had not discussed that, but that gives me the option of asking Christina Cannon on, right? So I guess we're just going to have her cover a lot of that territory.
Yeah, please do. You know, because that has a lot to do with some of this investment.
Yeah.
I know that when we're working on the River Park project, Christina committed to doing a housing study, and that housing study is part of why that spinning mill project, why those developers chose that,
That's
because
right.
of that study that came out of that. And then, you know, but also some of the development is happening. I think we're having some of the boomeranger effect going on. A lot of people that are from this area that moved away, whether it was college or otherwise, and then have come back and want to make, you know, this a great home for their families and their future.
Absolutely. Well, they're seeing all this stuff going on, and success breeds success, right? Mm-hmm. And we've had a lot of years with we weren't having all that much success, but now you are, and people are actually legitimately getting excited about it. You've involved a new young core of people in town and got them excited and going, and you know, there's a lot of enthusiasm going on right now, and so that may lead to a lot of other things. The other thing, and we don't have time, but I was going to talk to you about even the burgeoning restaurant scene in the area too, and I've got to believe that a lot of that has to do with all the projects and things going on.
Well, the owners at Brickyard Hollow, they're from here.
They're from here, that's right, Scout.
So that's part of that too. It's not just one thing, it's all of the things, and everybody grabbing onto the vision and moving forward.
So. Well, let's keep it going. These are exciting times here in Skowhegan. This is wonderful. So we have had a very interesting show today, and thank you, Christine Almand, for being on the show, and look forward to having you on again in the not too distant future.
Sure.
And now you know.